Welcome back to Sports Thriller. I'm your host, Coach Hall. I've been away for a while, but I'm certainly glad to be back this week. You get the culmination of the high school football championships going on around the nation, especially right now in day 3 of the UIL out in Texas. Probably the classiest event in all the high school sports. Last week you had Georgia, another classy event. This week, along with Texas, you have Florida. Florida's in its second week, but they had the small schools last week. They have the bigger schools this week. But personally, I could care less. Reason why I don't care because what Florida is putting out now is a circus atmosphere. And it's all created by two things. You have the law that allowed students to be able to transfer schools at will, and then you have the weak FHSAA, who to me has always seemed to bend to member schools. And just give you an idea about how the transfer system works here. Normally you sign your forms to transfer before, and you file a proper paperwork, then you can be able to transfer with no problem. But I've seen a lot of instances now here where players transfer in the middle of the season, and they might play against one team, then that school that they lost to, they may end up 3 or 4 weeks later at that school playing for them, all in the same school year. But here's what's tragic about it. If I'm a player and my team is not projected to do so well, I can go play for another school. And just another explanation of how it works. Open enrollment is what it's called. If I am a student and I want to go to a school out of district, if that school has space available, then they have to accept me. I just have to find my own way to get there. Now that's basically for academics, but that has expanded into athletics. And what players are doing, they're using it to go play for schools that might have a chance to win or get more exposure, or for whatever reason. But if I want to go to school, if I have a home school here, let's just call home school. If I want to go play for school A, who has a good football team, I can go over there and play for them. Once that season is over, I can go play for school B in basketball. Then once that's over, I can go play for school C in baseball, softball, whatever, run track. And at the end of the year, I can transfer back to my home school to graduate. All this goes on in the same year. I think it's kind of crazy. I understand players want to move around for certain advantages, but what they don't realize is these colleges, they already know what they're looking for. So it really doesn't matter where you play. You can play on a team that's 0 for 10. But if you got the measurements and you got some stats, and you have the potential to move up, that college is going to find you. So it doesn't matter who you play for. But what these guys are doing, it's become like Pop Warner. You get with a couple of your players, buddies of yours, and you want to go play for this school, let's go play together and win the championship, or whatever reason. Or you don't like the coach, and you guys pull a revolt on the coach, you come to spring practice, then when spring practice is over, you go play for another school. Coaches have no idea what kind of team they're going to have after that spring. So you can have one look in the spring, but when the fall comes, it's completely different. And it's devastating to a lot of teams, especially in rural areas, if you're expecting you don't have so many players to begin with, and you lose your best players to your rival. So some schools are good at collecting talent, while others are not. You have athletic directors who kind of like myself, who don't really believe in all this stuff. And the only tool that they have to fight back against that, they just say if you went to school A to play football and you want to play basketball with me at school B, the only tool I have to fight with is you weren't here when tryouts or the season started. So technically I don't have to let you play. They can't stop you from going to the school, but I don't have to let you play. There are some athletic directors doing that. But by doing that, you have established your reputation as you're not one to allow transfers to come to your school. So your talent is going to decline as time goes on. So you're going to have schools that have opportunities for players, and then this group over here, like yourself, you won't get any players. So the gulf is going to grow wider. Because of that, now you have smaller schools routinely beating bigger schools, and the middle schools are routinely beating these large schools. And when the playoffs begin, you've been playing against teams that are bigger than you because nobody wants to play you anymore. You have an advantage in the playoffs because now you're playing against schools that are supposed to be your size, but you're nowhere near the same classification as that school. So I'm saying if you're going to allow these transfers to happen, then you should get rid of the classifications for playoff purposes. For instance, in Florida, it's 8A. Take 1 through 4 to play against each other in one big pool, and then another big pool for classifications 5 through 8. At least that'll be more fairness than what you have now. Because what you're seeing now is the same teams playing in the playoffs against each other. And it's kind of like what it was before. The private schools always did what's going on now. It's just they're being competed against by these other schools. And I don't think they like it very much. But you take Jacksonville Bowls, for instance. They have a small population, so they're only going to go but so high in the state classifications, which means they're always going to be a consistent winner. But with the facilities that they have, they need to be playing 6, 7, 8 classifications instead of 3 and 4. And even when I was in school, they were in 2A. So they've lived off these rules, but in reality, they were always a higher classification than the teams they were playing against. So I think the association needs to step in and put a stop to this. If this is going to continue, high school sports, it doesn't mean anything much. That's why I'm not excited about watching it. So I think they need to put a stop to that. But however, I want to talk about Hawthorne a little bit. They have done well under this system, and they're getting closer and closer and closer. And my prediction, if this insanity continues where players can keep transferring, not placing fault on anybody, but if they continue, they're getting closer and closer and closer, they will win a state championship. So, you heard it from me first. But I just like to see things go back the way they were. High school football to me is my town against your town. And when you got a roster that looks like a college roster, when the players come from wherever, and then once the season's over with, they go somewhere else, I don't see how you can really call that high school football, especially when high school is supposed to be about learning lessons. You're not teaching the kids anything when they can transfer at will and do what they want to do and get mad with the coach and go somewhere else. I mean, you're not learning anything. But one thing I'm hearing about all these transfers, they get the word that they can go to one school, and when it don't work out, they go back home to their original school. But I'm finding that the players that they sold out, they don't want them anymore. So what are you going to do then? You can't go to the school that you originally left for. Now you can't come back home. Where are you going to go? These are all things that I'm starting to see happen here in the state of Florida. So if you're like me and you're with that my town versus your town thing, plead with me to return to some normalcy. Because the way it's going, high school football doesn't mean a thing. That's my 2 cents on the take, but I'm looking forward to some good competition, especially out there in UIL, who draw 35, 40,000 people. You can't beat that over a weekend. I'm just talking about on one day. So over a 4-day period, what they have, they'll draw 100,000 people. And that's great. I like that. So tune into the UIL, Florida football, still good athletes, but the system, it sucks. The leadership sucks. They need a new association guidelines, new leadership, whatever. But that's the only thing that's slowing down the reality that Florida football is high grade, the leadership. This is sports for real.